This episode of Old School Sessions is brought to you by Diesel Freak.
He got more camera stuff than I'm worth.
Well, hey guys, we're over here at Holopaw, and we're at Smitty's Barbecue. And so first off, we gotta say thank you to Mr. Smitty for allowing us to step in and take over the restaurant after hours to allow you guys to sit down and tell us a few stories. So I'm gonna step out of the way. Most folks know who I am. I'm gonna hand it over to Chuck Church Jr. And he's going to be somewhat of our moderator during this session, basically just to walk us through some things. And we'll start off with Chuck, you introducing yourself and give us a quick backstory on who you are, and then we'll do the same with these other gentlemen that are sitting at the table.
I'm Charles Church Jr. I'm originally from Orlando. Now we actually live down here in Holopaw. I've been driving probably for about 26 years. Started back in '96. Driving a dump truck. Yeah. Driving a dump truck for about 3 or 4 years, and then got my truck that I'm actually driving now. It was a dump truck. Switched it over into a tractor and started running on the road. Been doing that ever since. Now, just doing a little bit of everything.
Why don't you introduce the rest of these gentlemen? We'll leave your dad for last.
Want to go with you, Richard?
Sure. What do you want to know? Where I come from?
Yeah, tell us about where you started at and how you got.
I started
into
in
trucking.
Detroit, Michigan. My pop was given news that Detroit was going to go down the tube, so he came to Florida and bought a place. And then he tried to figure out how to leave Detroit, so he decided to buy a truck and go into trucking. And I was 17, and I started riding with him when I was out of school, in the summer. And that's when I learned to drive, was in '73, and I've been driving one ever since. I remember when he finally turned me loose and went by myself. He said, here, he handed me the keys and told me not to blankety blank his truck up or don't come home. And that's exactly what I did.
Which truck was that? Was that one?
That was that brown one that I showed you a picture of, the brown Kenworth.
So it started in?
It was hooked to a reefer. I rode with him during the flatbed days.
Okay.
I wasn't legal then. I didn't get old enough to drive over the road till when I was 21, and that was in '76.
When I was born.
That's when I got turned, and it was a load of plants, believe it or not. That's when I first started running by myself. I was standing in the market there in Sanford, and a guy tapped me on the shoulder and asked me if I had a reefer trailer, and I told him I did. And I didn't tell him what mine, but I told him I had one. And he said, would you like to go to Detroit? Which I knew Detroit well, but I didn't know it would start somewhere, Georgia somewhere, and start dropping all the way up. Anyway, I told him, yeah, and he said he would keep me, if I did a good job, he'd keep me busy till January. And at that time, we didn't know what we were going to do. Didn't even know how to get a load. And that's how I started hauling plants. And I've hauled them ever since. That's what I'm going to go load tomorrow.
Yeah, that's about what you had hauled.
Yeah, that's all.
We've all hauled those.
I've hauled all kinds of stuff, but
That was our
I
biggest thing.
flatbedded with him for 3 years. And then it's been pulling a reefer ever since. That's how I got into it. But I learned how to change tires and all that kind of stuff before I was legally today old enough to do anything.
What about you, Frank?
Yeah, let's see here. I tried to get a job after high school, 17. Couldn't really get anything, but a guy said, come back when you're 18, I'll hire you. So he hired me. I went to work in an ice cream plant. And I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. It's already 10 degrees below zero up there. And I worked in an ice cream plant, 20 below zero. But, so anyway, I got this job. I thought I was rolling in the money, making $1.05 an hour. And it went from, like he said, 40 hours. First week was like 70, and then 80, 90 hours all the time. And they had all these route trucks delivering mom and pop stores, supermarkets, a little bit of everything really, restaurants and all. So I seen them route trucks, and I told the foreman, I said, man, I'd like to drive one of them route trucks. Trying to get out of that freezer. So So anyway, a couple months went by, and I was walking across from one building to the other. He said, "You want to be a driver? Go get a truck. We got to go make some deliveries." So I was 18 at the time, start running a 6-wheeler. And then they had a 10-wheeler, drove that sometime. And they had 4 tractors, 4 trailers. 2 trailers were on the road delivering their distribution centers. 2 were being loaded. So when a little over 20, before 21, I said I'd like to drive a big truck. Say, well, start practicing, come in the morning on my own time and start backing 2 spare trailers in so they can load them in this dark hole they had, this garage and stuff. And that's how I learned how to back up. That's all I did was back up. And first truck I drove was a 49 International gasoline, and the spare truck, if that one broke down, was a 49 Dodge gasoline single axle. And then their trucks for the road was a 62 Ford, and but now that had a twin screw and everything, and that had that was gasoline. Finally, they bought a Freightliner with a diesel engine, 10-speed Road Ranger in it. And by that time, I started running distribution centers for them. But the cold and the snow got to me, and when I turned 24, I moved to Florida, Miami. And I worked for a couple different companies, milk company delivering with a truck, big truck, delivered with a grocery chain. Moved up here to Orlando, ended up buying my own truck. And boy, I wouldn't have bought a truck. I was driving for a guy up here, part-time driving a truck. And I don't know where he got all his money, but he started with 4 trucks. Took him like 6 months, and he had 40 trucks. And I said, I need a piece of this. So I went out and bought myself a truck. And right after him and his family and the rest of them all went bankrupt. And here I was stuck with the truck making payments. But I stayed with it. And it took years and years. And me and your father will tell you, boy, all the times I broke down on the side of the road
I've been
and
out a couple of
everything.
them.
Man, oh man, I'm telling you what, we saved each other's butt more than once. And anyway, finally it took years and years. And finally got my federal authority. He already had his, and I figured, well, I'll try it. And I didn't make money until I got my own authority. And I bought a nice used Peterbilt. Looked good, and started making money for some reason. And after that, start buying new Peterbilts, new trailers and all that. And I'd be in it today, but I got cancer in '06.
Remember that?
And I knew I had 6 months of chemo. And I said, well, trucking business got to go, and I sold everything. And when I got done with it, that was it. And now, like I say, that was last week in '06 when I come off chemo. But chemo was Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So there's no way you could work anywhere.
No.
Being tied up 3 days a week, so I gave it up. If it hadn't been for that, I had the game plan. I was going to have my truck paid for, trailer paid for, and, be just driving part-time.
25 years. I didn't know you had cancer.
Yeah. And so now I'm 79, be 80 in December, and still feel good enough I could drive to California, but I don't think so.
I don't know.
Them days are over. And so I moved out here in Holopaw. I've been out here over 30 years. I'm all just east of the restaurant here, right here on 192, and been there ever since.
All right, Dad, how about you?
Well, I guess I was growing up in trucking. My dad was in trucking way before I was born, and he hauled produce and stuff like that. And then he got local into hauling sod and running Belglade back to Orlando. And anyway, he hired a driver and stuff like that. And I used to run down to Belglade with the driver because the driver would let me drive. Oh, Lime Rock Road down there, and he started me out on that, and I more or less kept on and learned how to drive and stuff. And so then I went to work for the county when I got older and started moving heavy equipment and stuff like that. Met my wife, and when about the time Drigger was born, I had my own truck, had an old cab over Ford, run New York City, which that was a mistake. But anyway, did that and quite a few years, and then got my own truck, and I still got the 81 that I bought new. Don't want no more, and it's been a good truck. So anyway, now we pretty much stay local. We run a little bit out of state with heavy equipment stuff. And I've known Richard for 40 years, and I've known Frank for about 30 years.
About 40, because I met your father back at the same time you bought your 81 truck. He was my next door neighbor.
That's right, okay.
So that was about 81.
Yeah,
82?
81, yes,
Yeah,
81.
So it's been 40 years we've been doing each
I
other.
met him in Chicago. I blocked him in the
Yeah.
truck stop.
Yeah, I woke up and there was Richard over there. I couldn't move.
Yeah, he was.
the fuel island.
No, he was parked beside the truck stop. Ain't even there no more. It was a
Calumet.
Union 76 in Calumet, Illinois.
Yeah, I was sitting on the side, and Richard, he pulled right up beside. We was both in cab over. I was driving for Eldon Tozier then. Anyway,
No, you was
in my
in
Kenworth.
your Kenworth,
Anyway,
yes, sir.
that
I was still in the cab.
I looked over and I says, this guy got me blocked in. Who in the hell is this? So the next thing I know, Richard, he pops up. We went in and had coffee, and we've been friends ever since. He finally let me out of the truck stop.
After he paid for my coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then probably how many years? Then we got Digger. Digger, he rode with me a lot, and this, that, and the other, and we got him into trucking. I guess father and son. And he's the
Good blood, I guess.
third generation of it,
Yeah.
and I guess I'll keep trucking till I die.
Yeah, and I got girls.
But
I
I
don't
was
see them getting into trucking. So
Born and raised in Orlando, and we moved out here to Holopaw.
As long as we can get
But,
a physical card.
Yeah, we keep getting that. We'll be all right.
But anyway, that's about the size of it for me. Been all over everywhere. I think there's one state I hadn't been in, and that was Vermont.
Yeah.
I just never had a load go there, so I never went there. Been in every state besides that.
Here at Diesel Freak, located in Gaylord, Michigan, just an hour south of Mackinac Bridge, we offer the parts, turbos, manifolds, injectors, fleet service, down to your owner operator. We have customers with race applications. We have a dyno for diagnostics. What we like to do along with our own apparel is make apparel for others as well. Hats, t-shirts, decals, vehicle graphics, from mild to wild for your truck here at Diesel Freak.
So it's kind of like story time now. So you made a reference to Digger. So explain who Digger is.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
And then when I back up, and I want to hear a story that I was told.
Okay, with Digger, how he got that name, I never really cared for Charles growing up. And then, you know, Mom and Dad always called me Chuck. I really didn't like that. So anyway, when he was born, I was moving heavy equipment. I wasn't even at the hospital with Carla. So when I went out there, she done named him Charles Raymond Church Jr. And so anyway, when he was real little in the bassinet, I started calling him Digger, and it stuck with him all these years.
All through high school. Everything.
All through, yeah.
All friends of high school.
In school, his cousins and everything would call him Digger, and everybody else, well, who's Digger? They didn't know him by Digger, they knew him by Charles.
Yeah,
I knew you for several years before I knew your real name.
really.
But
Nobody
That's-
called you by it.
that's how he got that name.
So now, Digger told me this story about you driving for the first time and how your dad had some thoughts about that.
Remember when your grandpa wouldn't ever let you drive?
Oh yeah. Yeah, well, when I was driving, the driver let me drive and everything. And I'd go with him because I could drive, I could smoke cigarettes. Right? So anyway, you couldn't do that with Dad.
Yeah.
You know, Dad never knew you drove or anything else. And anyway, I was going down one morning and down in Pahokee, it was breaking daylight. And I think Tex was up in the bunk sleeping, and I was probably maybe 12, I think 12 years old. And one of Daddy's buddies was coming the other way and seen me driving, right? And, you know, tooted a horn, you know, do all that stuff, you know, back in the olden days. Anyway, a couple weeks later, you know, Hancock called Daddy, Buddy Hancock called Dad and was talking to Dad, says, yeah, I see that son of yours, he's handling that old truck pretty good. And Daddy didn't know nothing about it. And he come unglued. And he said, you don't never drive my truck. You know, this is how we make our living, blah, blah, blah. And I thought he was going to fire Tex, but he didn't. So anyway, it got to be where when Daddy wanted me to go with him, I wouldn't want to go. But he messed up his leg, and he talked me into going with him one time, and we got out there on the turnpike, and he said, let me see what you can do. And so after that, and then Dad started letting me drive. But that's how all that started.
That's cool. Now, about how old were you then?
I was 12 years old when I started. I was probably 10 or 11 when we was driving down that Lime Rock Road. But I was 12 years old, and like I say, they started me out on the Lime Rock Road, and then we stopped in here one night, you know, Tex, and it was one of Harold Williams' trucks. We was hauling sod out of Belgrade. And so Tex says, well, you follow us on down to Hee Haw Junction. And I was 12 years old. And old Tex, he jumped in a truck with that driver, Harold Williams, and I followed him down there, and we got to Hee Haw Junction, and had another cup of coffee. Huh?
Did you ever get that real nervous feeling when you
No,
had
it
another
didn't.
truck coming at you?
No, I do now, because I'm old.
I can remember when I first started, Daddy let me drive a cab over internationally though. That was the first truck he had. And I can remember another truck coming at us like that. I'd get just as nervous as a cat on a room full of rocking chairs, man. That scared me crap.
Yeah,
And
well,
finally it got to where it didn't bother me anymore.
well, I do now, because they got them real bright lights and everything like that, and they come up through there, and you're half blinded, and when they get right up to you, you don't know where you're at. You can't see nothing.
No,
You know.
you just basically
Yeah.
just holding it in a straight
Yeah,
line.
just hope they don't come over, and hope you don't go over.
I even had that story, got to do that when I was 13, driving actually Joe Bruner's
Oh,
truck.
yeah.
But Joe Bruner was supposed to have been here today, and he didn't.
He didn't make it, yeah. Yeah, Digger, yeah, me and Carla and Digger was going up, and we got there in Tennessee, and Joe was there, and we stopped there, and we seen him, we, you know, just kind of hooked up with him, and anyway, you know, it was, well, Digger wanted to ride with him. So I said, okay, so we take off, and the next thing I know, I was talking on the radio and hollering back here, and Digger was answering the radio. And I said, where's Joe at? Oh, Daddy's in the bunk sleeping. I said, do what? You know, he's back there sleeping. And the only thing, you know, it's different when he's driving. I mean, he's been driving just as young as I have, or even younger. I let him drive. And anyway, the biggest thing, it's a lot different when he's sitting over here and you're with him. But when he's back there driving and you don't have no control, so we got up there and we got to Morton's Gap. I said, Digger, follow us in here. And I says, if you know, either Joe can stay there or whatever, you're not going to drive no more. But
He was falling asleep. He was dozing off, and I kept telling Joe, "Is he all right? Yeah. He's like, "Why you want to drive?" I said, "I think I can do a little better than you can right now." So that's how that switched.
well, yeah, Joe, he was real bad. We left here. He broke down. He running late. And we met up there at Wildwood, and we left there at 11 o'clock. And he had a Kenworth with old Cummings in it, and it had a 13-speed overdrive, double over, and that thing would fly with a load of plants on. It wouldn't run too good with a heavy load. But anyway, got going up through there, and we was at Chattanooga daylight. And I said, Joe, you want to drive? I said, I'm getting tired. So Joe started driving. We was going over Mount Eagle, and I was laying in the bunk. He had an A model. And anyway, I was stretched out like this, and we was coming down that mountain. And I was on my tummy, and I'd slide this way, and I'd slide back that way. And I was talking to the Lord. I said, Lord, if you let me live through this, I'll never ride with him again.
He was making them corners, wasn't he?
Yeah, but we was in Danville, Illinois the next morning, that morning, probably about like 10 or 11 o'clock, making the first drop. That's one of the fastest trip I ever made out of here. The old Kenworth did run.
Oh yeah.
But
Richard, take us back to when you first started driving, and what was that like when you first started driving?
I couldn't wait to get behind the wheel, but Daddy never would let me. And when he would let me, it was dark, and I'd get sleepy real early. And finally, he got to where he'd let me drive during the day. But it was only when we was away from where there was any scales, we'd back basically on back roads or something, on 2-lane. And that scared the crap out of me, 2 lanes with it first. But then, because that cab over, you're sitting way out there next to that white line, or yellow line, we should say. You ain't sitting towards the middle of it. You're out there right next to it.
sitting on top of the tire.
So when you pass, like up in Cairo, Illinois, when you cross one of them bridges, this is before the interstate was finished. Well, none of the interstates was really finished then. That you'd have to you either slow down or reach out there and yank your mirror in because you may get it broke. Because it was the old narrow bridges. And he finally got to where he would turn me loose, and let me drive for periods of time, but then he was having me do his logbook. And then when he had turned his logbooks in, this was kind of comical, he had turned his logbooks in, they'd call him into the office, you know, send him a message. Or when he got to, back then there wasn't cell phones, so when you went to a terminal, I'd have to get in the bunk and stay in the truck. You know, I'd get in the bunk before we got there. And they'd ask him what's wrong with him. Is if you lost your mind because his log sheets would be all screwed up. Couldn't get them straight. You know, and he came out there and he'd be all over me. I said, "It's not my logbook. I'm just learning how to drive, let alone this." But he'd straighten them all out, and then he'd let me start doing them again. He did that time and time again, so I got to where I could lie pretty good on them.
Yeah, that was the secret to it, wasn't it?
Yeah, basically you had to learn how to lie on
Well, I
the line.
remember we used to carry them portable typewriters with us and make up a fresh bill of lading every day, so it was
Yeah, I did that.
with a different date every day.
Yeah, Arizona. When I run out there, I carry me a typewriter.
I never did.
Yeah,
Didn't?
yeah, the old Smith
Well, back
Corona.
then it was Triplies, and I had to keep chained. Well, I got it
remember
Yeah, every day.
and I got out there going into New Mexico to port entry. And I walked in there, you know, and I done used that Triplies, and I had to put whiteout on it and retyped it. Went in there, and that DOT man says, "How many times it make on this?" He said, "You got an inch worth of whiteout on here." You know, he threw it in the garbage, you know, and he went ahead and I said, "Let me go on and give you a permit to cross New Mexico." So
I want to hear more about this typewriter that.
You've not heard about them
typewriters?
Right, so Frank, tell us about the, you said you used to carry a typewriter.
Yeah, well, you get a bill of lading when you picked up your, you know, your load, and it would have a certain date on it. They never put times on anything. They always put dates. You know, there's no time, but you know, it's just a date.
that
So
and
sometimes
brokers-
we'd have to move the date around,
They never wrote anything out by hand either.
and
always
they typed it on a typewriter with carbon. So you could go to a truck stop and buy a whole 50 bill of ladings from the truck stop anytime. And if you wrote it, DOT's going to say, "No, you ain't pulling a fast one." But you put it in a typewriter,
Yep.
right?
makes it
The
look legal.
DOT is not expecting some
Truck
dumb
driver.
truck driver coming down the road to have a typewriter. You know? And when I went to high school, I could type 32 words a minute, so I could really hit that.
That's better than me. I was pecking on it.
So I had to change every day, you know, make dates match the times and everything else I had. But, you know, and then once you get to where you're going, then you go find your original bill of lading, have them sign it, and then mail it off right away. So I said,
Get it out of
wasn't
the
in the truck.
Yeah. Well, back years ago, you never really worried too much about a logbook. When I run the East Coast, you
Yeah.
never worried about getting stopped or nothing. Every once in a while, they'd be checking in the rest area or something like that there.
First 10 or 15 years I run by myself, I never
Never had a
filled one out.
logbook, no.
If the man stopped you and asked you for it, I said, "I don't have one."
Well, it was a different group of people in that
It was a
days, too.
$25 fine.
I mean, the guys that were DOT, they didn't carry guns.
Well,
They
back-
had a job to do at the scale house. They
Well,
were all
Steve,
waiting
then-
for retirement.
There was still ICC and DOT.
All right.
You know, see, the ICC, they were worried more about your authority, if you had the right to haul what you had on. And DOT, they pretend, you know, they looked at the vehicle.
Yep.
They didn't really worry about your logbook or none of that other stuff. They wanted to see if your vehicle was in good enough shape to be on the road. And it really didn't take a whole lot.
You know, but as years went by, now I was out in Arizona. I got pulled over when I hit right after I got to the state line, coming down New Mexico, going to California. And that DOT man, I don't know, he had something against all truckers in the world or something. But
He
anyway,
didn't like the color of your truck.
he didn't like something, but boy, he must not like my shirt or something. But anyway, he pulled me over. It took 2 hours. He pulled the hood. He checked serial numbers on my engine, went underneath. I mean, I never had such a thorough thing. And the only thing, and he shut me down for the stupidest thing, because I just bought that trailer, and the trailer had mud flaps that were bolted right below the the rear bumper below the tail lights. And they weren't on the sliding part of the tandem. And I had the wheels slid up for weight, or way up, and it was like 10 foot, and it was too much according to him.
Too far.
And I had to take and go to a shop, and I had to wait 24 hours so the guy could get around and weld a bar and move my mud flaps, drill holes, move my mud flaps so as they slide. on the
See, my
side and
trailer
go back
today,
and
mine
forth.
don't have none on the trailer.
Yeah.
It's they're mounted on the back. And
Yeah,
ain't
see,
nobody says
that's what I
squat.
got nailed for, because they were mounted on the back. Once you slide too far, because I forget, the bridge law in California was like 41 feet or something like that. So I'd always get everything leveled out from California to go into it, so as I legal it. I had that, but I wasn't legal for mud flaps according to him, so it took 24 hours, because this was like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
They
I
shove
went
you
back-
way behind
Yeah,
them.
to a little town back in there, and then the guy finally said, well, you know, we're getting ready to go home. First thing in the morning, we'll jump on it. So I got out of there. I just slept out there on these parking lot that night in the truck. And next morning, worked on it for about an hour or so, and I was gone.
And some of them are pretty cool. I know I'd done a log in Alabama, and that was the last entry. Went to Chicago, unloaded, and I was deadheading up to Wisconsin to load a load of taters. Anyway, going up there, and before you get to Madison, instead of scales there, and I'd holler at them guys, say, what are they doing up at the scale? Oh, they're just rolling your across. And I'd ask again, what are they doing up there? Oh, they're just rolling them across. So I got up there, sure enough, they was rolling them across. And I got out there, and he stopped me. He comes out there, and he wants to look at my logbook. I told him, I said, well, it's a little bit behind. I said, the last entry was in Florida, or in Alabama. And he says, well, pull on over here and get them caught up. Like, you know, how you going to cat them up a day or so. But anyway, I said, I got to ask you one question. He said, what's that? And I said, out of all these trucks that you rolling through here, why'd you pull me over and want to check my logbook? He says, because I knew yours was behind. And I said, well, that's a good enough reason for me.
They had that outlaw looking truck.
So I pulled up there and I, you know, caught him up or best he could and took on off, you know, no problem at all. But he was, like I say, pretty cool. Some of them be pretty cool.
Yeah, well, they had a big checkpoint. I come into Ohio one time, come all the way across country, California, going New Jersey or something like that, which I hated. But anyway, I stopped there, or all trucks had to go in there. And they had like 50 DOT cones. So I'm there, and the first thing guy said, let me get your registration, your license, and your logbook. Go, oh boy. He said, you're like 3 days behind in this logbook. I said, yeah, I haven't been feeling too good. I haven't had a chance to catch up.
Good answer.
So anyway, he says, here, go to work on this thing. Okay, so my wife was riding with me. It's in summertime. And she's riding with me. So anyway, there was two of them. It was an older DOT and a new DOT. He was sort of training. And they laid underneath the front, and he looked underneath there and said, hold on. I heard him tell the young guy, he said, we don't have to go no further. He said, when you see a truck like this, it's got all brand new drums, all brand new brakes, and new tires on it. He said, we don't have to go no further. He said, the guy takes care of his equipment, go ahead. Right, so we're going to let him go. I heard him. So he gets on up, he said, you're good. Don't even worry. Here's your license and registration. Go ahead, get out of here. And then my wife turns around and says, but you wanted to check his logbook, didn't you? Yeah. Stop it, be quiet now. And off I drove. He never said another word.
Was that Eve? Got you good.
That was about like Carl and Drigger. We was coming south out of Chicago and had some carrots and potatoes on mix. And I was heavy. And anyway, we was coming through Terre Haute, Indiana, and it was between Christmas and New Year's, and I just had bought tag, permits, and everything was all due on the truck. And this back there, we had a panel van DOT trucks back then. Anyway, we pulled in there at the restaurant, here he come. He wanted to see my logbook, you know. And so anyway, I said, well, it ain't caught up. Well, go on and catch it up. You know, he said, I see you're, you know, here with your family and all this stuff. So anyway, I got him caught up. We was in the restaurant and everything else. And I told Carl, I said, I'm not going to finish this. I'm going to leave it open in case I need to back it up, right? So we got down there to Evansville. You know, they had the scale in the middle of the road. They were on 41. And they were there. He was sitting in the center of the road. So I turned down to where Kenworth's shop was. And he pulled me over. And I got that, wrote, drew a line right there, handed it to him. I told him, be careful with the ink, it's still wet.
We're going to stop right here for this episode. That was great hearing how you guys got rolling, how you guys got your starts and everything, and how you guys typed your way into trucking freedom, so to speak. So on the next episode, we'll pick up with Mount Eagle, grades, and all the other stuff. Cool. Like that. All right, so we'll see you in the next one.
Do you have trucking veterans in your area that would be willing to sit down and recount some stories from the golden days of trucking? Would you like to host a session at your diner or chrome shop? Or would your business like to sponsor an episode of Old School Sessions? If so, follow the link below and get in contact.